Hello and welcome back to The Lion's Den. I'm your host Matt as always, and look, we have video! We actually have functioning video, and also this is going to be driving way better than I will because I'm going to take over in a minute. So let me do that. Yep, look, you can already see I'm careening off the beaten path. That went well. Anyway, I thought as today is the 100th episode of The Lion's Den that I thought I would do something a little bit fun, a little bit fancy, and I thought what better way to entertain you both auditorily and visually than to pick up a fun little website I found ages ago and I mentioned on one of my other episodes. Wow, the back tire just clipped straight into the terrain. So yeah, hopefully this sounds okay. Hopefully the audio isn't too overbearing. And yes, you can probably hear the clacking of my computer keyboard because it's a little bit noisy. But it just makes it more personal, you know? I'm like those gamers from, I don't know, 2012, maybe? But yeah, so this is part 2 of the whole Mario Kart thing. And I will warn you now, this is going to be completely unedited because I don't have any sort of editing experience and I couldn't be bothered to do it. So, I want to talk about Mario Kart soft drifting as best of my ability as I can whilst I'm doing this little drive. Also, it's very pretty. It's got the snow and the sort of the peachy golden red sunset. Delicious. Delicious? Delightful. So, right. Mario Kart soft drifting. This is something that I think people take for granted and don't realize how kind of complicated it is to do and to explain. How do I reset? Fantastic. So the main idea of soft drifting is to be able to charge mini turbos as fast as if you were drifting really hard into the turn, whilst not drifting really hard into the turn. That's the idea. So if you imagine taking a corner in Mario Kart whilst drifting, you've kind of got 4 different ways to drift it. You can either hard turn into the corner, like either straight hard left or right, which would be really tight drift. You can start a drift and have the stick in a neutral position, which would be sort of a medium drift, and then you can hold the opposite direction to the turn and get a wide drift. Now the idea of soft drifting is to be able to take the corner at a sort of medium tight angle, but not as tight as possible, but still charge your mini turbos as if you were taking it as tight as possible. Because for context, Mario Kart mini turbos will build up charge faster if you're drifting tighter, essentially. So if you're doing an opposite drift to go really wide, that's the slowest way to charge a mini turbo, and if you're turning hard into the corner, that's the fastest way. And the idea with soft drifting is that you can take the corner not as tight, but still charge as fast as possible. The thing I think people neglect to tell you is that the skill of soft drifting is not a one and done. When I first started soft drifting, I thought the concept was you find the angle to soft drift and then you hold it for an entire corner. That is wrong because there is no corner, particularly in Mario Kart, where you can actually do that, because the soft drifting sort of tightness of how tight it takes you around the corner is still fairly hard. It's not a wide radius that you will drift around. You'll still do it quite hard. So the first tip I would suggest for soft drifting, oh gosh, I've fallen off again. The first tip is do not get it in your head that you have to hold the angle the whole way around the corner. That's not how soft drifting works. The key way to make soft drifting work is to sit in that sort of Goldilocks zone of charging for as long as possible. That allows you to kind of go in and out of it to make sure that you're still getting around the corner effectively. The way people sort of explained it is most beginner players will do a thing called wiggle drifting, where they'll hold hard right and then left and then right and then left and right and left to kind of make sure that they can get around the corner, because obviously one is too tight, one is too wide. You want to sort of do that, but less extreme is the best way I could explain it. So once you find the soft drifting angle, you kind of want to sit in that angle as best as possible. And then every now and again, you kind of flick out to neutral. So just the stick being in a neutral position, and then hit it back straight into that that soft angle again. That's the best way to kind of soft drift, in my opinion, and the way that's worked quite effectively for me, because it allows you to get as much charging angle as possible, of the best charging angle, while still making the corner relatively easy to get around. So that would be the first thing. The second thing a lot of them don't talk about is dismounting a drift, which is really weird. It's a really weird thing to sort of say, oh yeah, you know, getting out of the drift is also really important. So in Mario Kart, and we'll come on to this next as well, when you're airborne, you have a lot of influence over where your car is going. It's not just you're in the air and that's it. You can drift through the air by using the control stick. Now, this is important in a number of aspects, but it's extremely important when it comes to drifting, because what you can do is you can take a really tight drift. I am stuck. Oh no, wait, I'm fine. You can take a really tight drift, say hard left for example, and when you're then fully charged and about ready to let go of your drift and get the mini turbo, you might be facing into a wall basically, and that's bad. What you can do though is you can jump. You can press the drift button to jump immediately after finishing your drift, and then hold the opposite direction. So let's say you're drifting to the left, for example. You're drifting, you've got your mini turbo, you then let go of the mini turbo, you start boosting, and then you hold hard right and jump. And what that does is, whilst you're in your jump, it allows your kart to kind of move slightly to the right and realign you for the turn better. That was not at all obvious to me for a long while, until I saw other people doing it in gameplay as I was watching time trials and stuff. So that's something really useful to consider. On that similar vein, there is a thing in Mario Kart called empty hopping, and this is the concept that when you start a drift, obviously you press the drift button and your car jumps. What you want to do is not be touching your control stick whilst you're jumping, because like I said, you can drift in the air. So in that little short animation of you jumping before you start a drift, if you're holding the control stick left or right, you're going to start moving in that direction, which means your alignment for the corner is now wrong, and you can't charge your drift as long because you're going to have to readjust the angle of your drift and how long you can drift and how tight you can drift. So that's something to practice in, is just pressing the jump button before you start a drift and not holding the control stick. The idea is that you press the jump button with no input on the stick, and then just as you're about to hit the ground, that's when you input your left or right input for your drift, so to make sure you actually get, you know, a drift started. Obviously, if you don't do that, you'll just jump and go nowhere. So, very important thing. And my sort of other tip, I think, for drifting is what I like to call the flick. I want to say Scandinavian flick because that's a real life drifting technique, but it's not the Scandinavian flick. The idea of the flick, as I will call it, is that when you initiate a drift, obviously you'll do your empty hop, you'll hit the ground, and you'll hold, let's say, left again for a left drift. What you can then do is immediately you can immediately flick the stick to the right. And what that does is it kind of makes your car slide outwards a bit. So on certain courses, there are certain corners that are really awkwardly designed in the lead up to them, and you kind of need to flick yourself outwards before you then do like a hard drift into the corner. So that's something really good to sort of practice and get used to, and I use it, I think, a lot on something like London Tour. There's a couple corners in that really benefit from being able to start a drift going one way, but then flick yourself outwards before you start turning in. I probably should have started with this, but this is all applying to outward drifting cars and bikes, because there are outward drifting bikes. If you're using an inside drifting bike, I have no idea how that functions in this game specifically, because obviously the angles are all different and how you take corners is probably different, so you might want to look up on that. But not a lot of people use inside drifting bikes on this game, and a lot of people often only use them in time trials, and they're the people that know what they're doing. So in general, you're probably using an outside drift, and all of what I've said will apply, which is good. Whoa, we're going off. Okay. I think the one thing as well is that for me it was extremely frustrating in the beginning because I couldn't figure out the drifting angle. Now this again was probably just a misconception in my brain with how it works. Every video is like, oh, when you're doing drifting, let's imagine the left control stick is a clock. You want to kind of have your stick in the sort of 2 to 3 position or the 5 to 6 position. And that's a very broad range. The way Mario Kart works is depending on the combo and the character and everything that you have, the drifting angle, so the position of the stick, is different and it is precise. There is no leniency in how it works, annoyingly. So what works for one combination and character does not necessarily work for another one. So you will have to experiment and try and figure out where the angle is for your car. Once you find it and done it for a fair bit, your muscle memory just kicks in and you'll find that angle really nice and easily. But in the beginning, you're gonna either be drifting way too tight or way too wide and not getting the right angles and not getting the right amount of charging. But you just kind of have to work with it. Oh god, I'm out of control. Oh, it's a bridge! I saw this the other day when I was doing test recordings, and this is really pretty. So yeah, just that's gonna take a little bit of getting used to. Don't worry, once you've got it, it's super easy, but getting into it is kind of difficult. So yeah. Whoa. I wasn't ready for a hard left turn. Oh gosh. I hope all of that has made sense so far. If it hasn't, I'm sorry. You'll just have to look at some more extensive guides. It'd be great if I was actually playing the game and I could explain it, but then I would be a video game channel, and I'm not. So yeah, soft drifting is in theory a very easy thing to do. In practice, quite hard. But it's again one of those things where it's very difficult to learn initially, but once you've got it, and you'll be fine. The way you know you've got a soft drift is you'll be taking a corner fairly loosely, but you'll be charging up a mini turbo really fast, which is really fun to see, honestly, and it shows you you're doing it correctly, and it's quite satisfying. I think the track I learned how to do it on was just Mario Circuit in the Mario Kart 8 version of Mario Circuit, the big Mobius strip is what it's called, because it has really big wide turns, and what that teaches you is if you hard drift left or right, you won't make it. If you soft drift correctly, you still won't make it, so you have to do this kind of soft drift and then wiggle back to neutral and then back into the soft drift. But you should be able to use those corners to get a purple mini turbo if you do it correctly. And also it's such a wide turn and such a long turn that you can experiment and see for yourself how the charging rates differ. Like if you hold hard left, obviously you'll careen into the off-road, but you'll also see how the mini turbo charges really fast. What have I done? Oh my god. I was trying to press R, but I pressed E. Oh gosh, I'm just gonna stop before I give people a seizure warning. Yeah, so you can do really tight drifts, you can do really wide drifts and see how slow that is, and then obviously you can see your soft drift angles, and you can see how that starts charging. As far as I'm aware, as well, this is a small side note, you can either hold diagonally up or diagonally down. As far as I'm aware, that is equally viable. I personally hold diagonally down, mainly because my muscle memory from playing Smash Bros makes me want to hold diagonally down. But in theory, you can do diagonally up, and I think that works. So maybe something to experiment or to double check before you put too many hours in doing that. Either way, hopefully that's all made sense. Hopefully you've enjoyed watching this and watching me careen around in this random car. And also, I hope this makes you want to play this, because it's really quite fun. But anyway, because this is not going to be edited, I'm not going to spend too long. So I hope you all have a fantastic holiday, whether you're celebrating Christmas or anything else, or just having some time off. Have a happy new year, and I will see you next week, possibly, hopefully. Bye!